Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Basel Pod on House Enterprise. I'm Sam Basel, joined alongside, once again, Jordan Laube, where we're breaking down all 8 NFL divisions heading into the 2025 season. This is our second episode on the first, which you should go check out on our House Enterprise pages on YouTube, on X, on house-enterprise.com. We broke down the NFC East, home of the reigning Super Bowl champion Eagles, what they could do to come back to the Super Bowl and potentially repeat, and what their opponents can do to give them a challenge. Today, we are breaking down the AFC East, home of the Jets, Pats, Bills, and Dolphins. Jordan, how you doing?
I'm good, man. Doing great. It is a warm one today, very balmy outside, but to match that, we're going to have some balmy conversations in this breakdown of the AFC East today.
Yes, always a very interesting division. Obviously, it's one that the Bills have had a hold on for a very long time, taking the reins from the Patriots, who had a hold on it for a very long time. But right now, it's kind of Buffalo's, over the past couple of years, I should say, it's been Buffalo's division to lose. And let's start off with the Bills. Heading into 2025, is this division, let's just rip the Band-Aid off, once again, Buffalo's division to lose?
It is, and they're not going to lose. I think, just based on, and we'll get into it as we go along, but just the strength of the rest of the division, almost every team did improve, but did not improve in areas that are key and crucial to winning against the Bills, and against top offenses in the NFL. So yeah. We'll get into that a little later, but it is the Bills' divisions to lose, and they are not going to lose once again for what feels like 5 years now in a row they won the division. Maybe a little bit, maybe one got away from them, but this is a team that was the laughingstock of the NFL for a long time, and then 2015 kind of rewrote the ship a little bit. Josh Allen obviously has had an incredible projection and incredible progression through his time in the NFL, and is now obviously won the MVP last season. A lot of people disagree with it. I'm sure we'll kind of get into that as we go along, but yeah, I thought it was well deserving.
Yeah, I mean, let's kind of break that down. So obviously Josh Allen won the 2024 MVP. Obviously it was a very tight race between him and a lot of other top tier talent, specifically Lamar Jackson. I know last year you did make the case, right, for Josh winning the MVP. Could you kind of expand into detail why you think this was the right decision?
Absolutely. And you have to look at the 2023 MVP race. There were 3 candidates that were at the top of the league, and that's Dak Prescott had the best production if we're looking at volume, passing yards, touchdowns, completion rate, and so forth. Dak Prescott was the best. Lamar Jackson led the best team in the NFL and played really well, especially down the stretch. And even though his production wasn't great, he himself played at a high level, and he would have been my pick for MVP in 2023 as well. The other person is Brock Purdy, who was incredibly efficient, played at an insanely high level, and took his team to the Super Bowl, and they have the second best record in the NFL that season. So, and a lot of people go, oh, Brock Purdy, he's got support. We talked about this last episode. Like, he does so much for that offense. He is not a system quarterback. He is the system in San Francisco, and we'll get into that when we get to the NFC West episode. But with that context of 2023, you have to view it through the same lens for 2024. Now, granted, the Bills were not the best team in the AFC, but they were one of the best teams in the NFL. And a lot of that had to do with Josh Allen and what he brought to the table. And remember, it's not the best player award. It is not the best box score award. It is the most valuable player to their team award, right? Mm-hmm. And most valuable across the entire NFL, where if you pluck that player off their team, they are not nearly as good as they would be if they were in that situation, right? And so MVP talks, a lot of people look at box score. You can't do that when we're talking about MVP, because then computers would just decide who wins, right? So over the course of this season, we're going to get into analytics here, because that's where the meat and bones of this conversation take place, and why you can't just look at box score, right? So if you want to look at EPA per play, which has become the end all, not the end all be all, but it has become the biggest forefront in analytics and determining actual value brought for each position. Josh Allen was first in EPA per play. And this is weeks 1 to 17 because he didn't play in week 18, right? And that you have to take that into account. He was so damn good. His team, he elevated his team so much that he didn't have to play in week 18 and they still were going to be the 2 seed. So take that as you will.
Left my fantasy team hanging in the championship, but we'll ignore that.
This is why we don't join leagues with 18 weeks. This is why we cut it off at 17. So first in EPA per play, first in adjusted EPA per play, which basically takes into account turnovers, defensive strength, time of possession, like basically situational, right?
Yep.
So adjusted EPA, he was 4th in EPA and completion percentage over expected composite score. He was 4th. Above him was Lamar Jackson. That was one of the categories Lamar Jackson did beat him in. 7th in overall success rate, so how often each play was successful. He was 7th. Lamar was ahead of him in that. 3rd in PFF offensive grade amongst quarterbacks. Lamar was ahead of him in that. 6th in PFF passing grade. 1st in PFF rushing grade in the entire NFL. And I know the rushing portion of the quarterback position doesn't necessarily make for who is the better quarterback, but it makes for the better player, which is what this award is. It's not most valuable quarterback. It's most valuable player. And he brings in a massive rushing aspect, right? So does Lamar. But in terms of how they carried the rock and what they did with it, Josh Allen was first. He was also first in big-time throw rate, so tight window throws, third down completion percentage, touchdowns and clutch moments, first downs and clutch moments, was the best in big-time throw rate. First in pressure to sack rate, meaning when he was pressured, only 8% of the time did that turn into a sack, which was by far the best in the NFL. Anytime you have someone with sub-10, you're heading into historical territory. So awesome at mitigating the pocket when he got pressured. First in big-time throws of 20-plus yards, and he had 28 of those. The next closest was Sam Darnold with 22. So a huge increase compared to the next guy. Third in big-time throws in the intermediate range, 10 to 19. And then 4th in deep rate of passes of 20-plus yards. So it's not like he's just thinking and dunking it short. He is attacking the intermediate and the deep portions of the field at one of the highest rates in the NFL, which normally guys who have really good box scores or guys who have a lot of yards and a high completion rate, people automatically go to, oh, well, were you throwing it short? Were you just dinking dunking it? Which is a tough part of the game. That should not discredit quarterback play in the short part of the game, right? Because everyone can look at, oh, it's just it's a 5-yard slant, it's a 7-yard in, or it's a 10-yard out, right? That should be discredited. It's really not because of how defenses do play those routes, right? That's another conversation for another day. But if you look at the aggregate and you look at all those rankings and all those stats put together, Lamar beat him in only 3 of those categories. I think there were 12 that I listed. Josh Allen did not have the production volume or the support. And now, granted, you can say Lamar Jackson's defense was bad at the beginning of the season. Again, we'll get into that in the AFC North episode. But what matters is he was more efficient, more effective, and elevated this Bills team to one of the best in the AFC and one of the best in the NFL, once again falling short to the Chiefs in playoffs. And again, MVP is not a postseason award, right? But in the culmination of everything, Josh Allen was the MVP in my mind. He was my pick when we did our voting for the House Enterprise. And now it's blowing up on Twitter again. People are sharing Lamar's box score. They're like, how did someone with a 41-4 TD to INT rate not win MVP? How did someone with over 5,000 yards not win MVP? You have to look at the whole picture. You can't just look at 4 base stats. And that goes for any position, right? And that's why in this podcast, we break it down to a more micro level and show you the intricacies. And if you put on any Bills game and you put on any Ravens game, there was a clear difference in quality between both teams on both sides of the ball. And Josh Allen does more for his offense than Lamar Jackson does.
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson's an awesome player. He's the second best quarterback in the league. But again, this is not a quarterback award. It is a player award, regardless of what people think, oh, it's a quarterback award. No. If it was a quarterback award, quarterbacks would have won the entire history the award has been active. It's just the fact that they provide the most value for their teams, especially in today's NFL with how QB-driven teams are.
Yeah. Before we get into the rest of the team, I do kind of want to ask one big thing about Josh Allen this season. Not really about Josh Allen, but about the Bills. This was Josh Allen's first time in 4 seasons that he was not able to throw Stephon Diggs, right? All 4 of Stephon Diggs' years in the Bills, he had over 1,000 yards. His lowest was in 2023 with 1,183. So for Josh Allen to go from losing his primary target to winning MVP, what does that say about Josh Allen?
I think it shows that he's a gamer, and it's not just because you see a lot of quarterbacks that improve their play with a wide receiver 1, which is supposed to happen, right? Like Jalen Hurts, once he got AJ Brown, unlocked a completely different side of his passing attack. Stephon Diggs coming to the Bills in the first place helped Josh Allen in his development. I don't think he's a high-end wide receiver 1, but as soon as Zay Flowers got drafted by the Ravens, there was an element of Lamar's game that picked up because Zay is so good when he's given time to let his route develop or create or get separation in space, right?
Yep.
And there's multiple other receivers we can tailor that to, that once they join a team, that quarterback did so much better.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Josh Allen, right, go from 2019 to 2020, from when no Diggs to with Diggs, he went from 3,089 passing yards to 4,544. That's a huge jump. Obviously, that's kind of there's a lot of other factors into that, just the progression of a young quarterback going from year 2 to year 3. But there's no way you could say that Stephon Diggs didn't have anything to do with it. You know
exactly. What I mean? Yeah, and the key thing with the Bills, right, is that they didn't have a true number 1 target. Like Khalil Shakir took a massive step forward. Dalton Kincaid did not. They were expecting Dalton Kincaid to be the top target on this team. I loved Kincaid coming out. He was injured last year, and he just didn't play well when he was healthy, right? Then you have Keon Coleman, who was supposed to be this big jump ball threat. He wasn't really utilized in the way that a lot of people thought he was going to be and what matches his skill set. And yeah, he had highlights and splash plays, but struggled to create separation within the offense. This year, they're going to use him a little differently. They're going to jam him in the slot more and just let him work on safeties and outside backers. And that should help him make some plays, right? But the whole offensive structure changed by getting rid of Diggs, and Josh Allen still performed the way that he did. I think that speaks a ton to the player and person that Josh Allen is, to be able to adjust and take this team from, 3, 4, 5 seed in the AFC to challenging for the 1 seed. Yeah. And granted, they have challenged for the 1 seed in the past couple of years as well, but to do it without a wide receiver 1, with a defense that was, did well, was struggling a little bit, dealt with a lot of injuries, and still go 13-4, and a lot of those wins were blowouts. They had a good margin of victory from what I remember. I wish I put it down in my notes, but he really pushed the envelope of getting this offense to step up in ways that no one would have thought it would have without a true number 1 target. And granted, a lot of that is the rushing attack was a lot better. Defense was crucial in not letting the field get flipped and giving the Bills offense room to breathe in their own territory. And that just made Josh Allen's life a little bit easier than it has been in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. Not making Josh Allen's life easier is a guy that, had some great offensive production last year for the Bills, but is right now in a little bit of a contract dispute, and that is running back James Cook. So, Jordan, can you kind of provide an update on where the Bills sit with Cook?
Yeah.
And kind of where you think this is going to go?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe he did sign a contract yesterday. Yeah, he did a 4-year, $48 million deal. I was looking when I put it in my notes. I didn't get a chance to update it before this, but I said he was going to be looking for 12 million plus a year, if not more. He got 12 million a year AAV value. When you look at contracts, though, you have to look at void years, you have to look at guarantees, bonuses. So the big AAV number, we can't really look at that and say, yeah, he got exactly what he wanted. You got to look at the underlying, any of the voids, any of the guarantees, any signing bonuses, right? And if it's front loaded, back loaded, or if it cascades, right? So I need to dive in a little deeper on that, but I think $12 million a year for someone who has gotten better every year, I think is solid value overall. Now, I do think he's going to regress in touchdowns because his first 2 years combined, he had 4 rushing touchdowns. Last year, he jumped up to 16, and I believe he had 18 total, maybe 19. So he had a huge jump in touchdowns. And we know with data, if you have a jump that big, you're bound to regress back down. I still think he can be a 10-plus touchdown guy. He's got a lot of speed. He can read and run between the tackles and also break out to the edge. His strong suit is as a rusher. I do not think he's as good as a receiver as some people make him out to be. I just think he's an option to be effective in the pass game if Josh Allen has the last outlet he needs to go to, right? Which is kind of what that's not why you're paying him, but you're paying him this much to at least be a weapon in the offense as a receiver to some extent, right? So, I mean, you look at Kyren Williams, he got $11 million a year. He got a 3-year, $33 million deal. I think James Cook is better than Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams is one of the least efficient rushers in the NFL. He just plays in a very run-happy offense, right? Where the Bills are looking to pass, and if they're running, it's through James Cook or it's through Josh Allen. And that's kind of where I don't really agree with the contract. I think you have Ray Davis in the wings, who I think is going to be a special running back once he gets his chance. He's got really good size. Granted, he's on the older side. He'll be 26 this year in his second season, so that's kind of a red flag as it is. But besides that, he's got really good size, really good receiving chops, good contact balance, and he showed that his rookie year in the chances that he got. And even with that, let's say he's not available, you still have Ty Johnson, who's a decent receiving threat, which James Cook does not have the ability that Ty Johnson does as a receiving back. Yep. So I think if they let James Cook walk or traded him and he got a trade and sign deal somewhere else, I don't think there would be as big of a drop-off as some people would expect. Now, granted, is Ray Davis going to go for over 1,000 yards rushing? No, I don't think so. But I think he would go over 1,000 scrimmage yards total, and Ty Johnson would get more opportunities in the receiving game because of it. And the two of them combined would get to something close that James Cook does on his own, and you would get it for a lot cheaper with Ray Davis being on a rookie contract and Ty Johnson being on a dirt cheap deal, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think I would have, especially because he is going to regress. And he might go for 20 touchdowns this year. Who knows, right? Like, he has gotten better and better every year, so maybe he does. But yardage is way more predicative and consistent than touchdowns. Best example is Eric Ebron a few years ago. First round draft pick, kind of was a bust with the Lions, goes with the Colts, goes for like 13 touchdowns and like 1,100 yards or something like that. He had a crazy year, right? Right after that, drop back down to what he normally is, right? And granted, that's one example, but that does happen consistently across every position in the NFL.
Absolutely. And let's get into the dark horse for the Bills. You picked linebacker Joe Andreessen.
Yes,
he had
sir.
a really very efficient end to his regular season in 2024. And so where could those improvements, along with maybe some regression from some other guys who are on the roster, kind of give him some time to shine?
Yeah, this is kind of like Thomas Fidone in the last episode. This one's kind of a long shot, but I got to shout out my fellow Bryant Bulldog, Joe Andreessen. Great guy. Got to play with him for one season while I was a senior at Bryant. He was a freshman. He brings really an interesting fit to this Bills defense as a linebacker, right? He's good at stopping your run. He's relatively okay in coverage. He can improve for sure. But his role is going to be run stuffing and getting downhill to the line of scrimmage, which he does an awesome job of and showed that at the end of the season. So 80% of his snaps came in the last 4 weeks of the season. So week 15 to week 18, with a big bulk of that in week 18. In that span, he was 15th among all linebackers in defensive grade with a 74.6. He had 0 missed tackles. And he recorded 7 stops and TFLs, which is a really good rate within a 4-game span for a sub linebacker, for someone who subs in packages or when someone's hurt or tired or whatever. Like, that's really good to have that. And what we define as a stop is stopping a running back or stopping a pass before it gains 30% of the yardage needed for a first down. And that's pretty standard across the board. And if it's third down, you just force fourth down, right? That's how we view stops in the NFL and in college as well. He was really solid at that. And I think he'll have more opportunity this upcoming season than last season. Matt Milano has missed 13. He missed 13 games in 2024 and 12 games in 2023 with various injuries. And he just turned 30 in the month of March. So you have an aging linebacker who hasn't been able to stay on the field. He might be a trade candidate. Granted, I would have to look at the contract and get the details, but may be a trade candidate by the deadline for a linebacker needy team. And that could be Joe's way to insert himself if Matt Milano doesn't get hurt. Then the other guy is Terrell Bernard, who there were really high expectations for him after a good 2023 season. But he was one of the worst linebackers in the league, especially in the back half of the season from week 10 to 17. He had the second lowest defensive grade at 43.9, the second lowest coverage grade at 37.3. He was ninth in yak allowed with 231 yards, and he allowed the most touchdowns with 4 in that span from week 10 to week 17, right? So if you do that over the course of an entire season, you're looking at someone almost giving up 500 yards of yak and 8 touchdowns while he's in coverage, which is not going to get done. Yes, he's a linebacker, but this is a guy who has been labeled as a coverage linebacker.
Yep, absolutely.
Do I think Joe is better than Terrell Bernard as a coverage linebacker right now? No, but I think Joe does a really good job of understanding the system that he's in, knowing his place in the scheme, knowing how his zone drops work, whether it's cover 3, cover 4, cover 2, whatever you want to call it. He's got really good zone drops, which is not rare, but something that is missing from a lot of incoming rookies, because in college they do something called spot drops, or they just do little hook drops where they just backpedal 3 steps and they stare at the quarterback. You have to keep your head on a swivel in the NFL, especially with how many crossing routes there are, how many pick routes there are. You have to keep your eyes moving at all times. Joe, when he was coming into this draft class, was in the better half of the linebackers when it came to that in that 2024 class. So I think with his ability and some of the limitations with the other players that are on this roster, he'll get more snaps than he was originally going to get as an undrafted free agent. And I think he could be a big splash player in crucial moments if given the right opportunities.
All right. And so for the big question for the Bills, with these changes on defense, stars emerging, stars potentially regressing, and we're continuing to move forward in this era of the Josh Allen Buffalo Bills. What can the Bills do to finally get over the hump and take down the Chiefs in the postseason? I think this is going to be a very familiar question for a lot of top AFC contenders, but the Bills, I feel like their struggles have been kind of the most noteworthy against the Chiefs in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Where can they get an edge over Kansas City?
I think getting a better pass rush and a more effective pass rush. And I think they wanted to do that by signing Joey Bosa. I don't know what his role is going to be in this defense. I don't know if they're going to want him to play over 1,000 snaps a season at this point in his career. I doubt it, especially with the injury history. He might be a designated pass rusher type body that'll play opposite Gregory Rousseau, and AJ Epinesa will take over the run down edge position, and Joey will just come in when they need him, because he still has a ton of juice as a pass rusher. He just can't play more than 500 to 600 snaps in a season at this point in his career, or else he's going to go down, right? So I think the Bills know that. I think if they get hungry or win hungry and they try to play him more than he's able to at this point in his career, he will not be healthy for playoffs, which they're going to need him healthy for to beat the Chiefs. And we'll get into the Chiefs, obviously, in the AFC West episode, but getting Josh Simmons and seeing how he's been doing at camp so far and just brutalizing really good edge rushers, they're going to need someone to beat Josh Simmons. And someone like Joey Bosa has that experience, has that savviness where he can beat up on a young rookie left tackle. And Greg Rousseau can do the same with It's just his length and his size. He's just a massive, massive defensive end. So I think, number one, having a good pass rush is going to be the most important. And number two, just having a more dynamic pass attack. This is a really good secondary. Trent McDuffie is one of the best defensive backs in the NFL, and they've had a tough time, especially with Khalil Shakir playing in the slot more last year. Had a really tough time getting open against him. I think putting someone like Keon in the slot is going to help open that offense up, and especially that matchup against Trent. Now, Trent is going to win those matchups 9 times out of 10. But if you can get Keon to win 1 or 2 jump balls in that inevitable playoff game against those two teams, that's going to give explosive plays to the offense, keep drives moving, and that's all you need him to do in that game against Trent McDuffie, and let the other playmakers do what they need to do to overrun a really good defense. So if Joey Bosa stays healthy deep into the playoff run and can beat up on Josh Simmons, and they can take advantage of a Keon Coleman and Trent McDuffie matchup just based on a size differential, that's going to open up the rest of the offense, and the defense is going to be able to stay effective. Now, the problem is obviously the Chiefs last year was the worst team they ever had in the Mahomes era, and they still made it to the Super Bowl, right? So we have that we have to consider. And I think I mentioned that last episode too, but we have to consider that, right? Like, this Chiefs team got better. Now, it's just a matter of matchup and just not making dumb mistakes in crucial moments like we saw. That 4th down last year, a lot of people pointed at Dalton Kincaid, and they're like, how'd you drop that? Like, it was a weird pass and he had to make a weird adjustment. But that play, Josh Allen made the wrong pass call protection, or the center made the wrong protection call. And you can't have those mental lapses in crucial moments like that and put yourself into pressure where you have to make a ridiculous highlight reel throw just to keep your team alive in a playoff game that, frankly, you should have won because you had them on the ropes in the first half. But that's just me.
Absolutely. So won't be surprised to see if we see these two teams against each other again in the playoffs, and we'll see if Buffalo ends up making some adjustments. Let's move from cold and snowy Buffalo all the way down to Miami, where we're talking about the Dolphins.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you would agree with me here, but I feel like these Dolphins teams over the past couple of years have just been like incredibly unlucky, just with injuries, and just, I feel like they have not really lived up to the potential that we've seen that these players can do individually. But this year, it kind of feels like their window might shrink a bit.
Yeah.
This is going to be a team that regresses in some ways. Can you kind of elaborate on where you think the areas in which those regressions will be the most prominent?
I think the number one we got to talk about is the secondary, right? Like, they bring in Minkah Fitzpatrick, who was a good safety in the NFL, right? But you trade away Jalen Ramsey, who, yes, he's 30, but he's still a top 10 corner in this league and incredibly effective, especially in man coverage. You have season-ending injuries to 2 cornerbacks who were going to play. Artie Burns is kind of more depth than anything else, but the big one is Cater Coe, who was going to thrive in the slot on this defense and has done a good job at that spot in his career. He's out for the season with an injury. And the secondary has no returning starters, and only one DB that was on the 2 deep for the depth chart the year before is returning this year. You have Storm Duck, who was a fun corner to watch in college. They're trusting him to cover the team's number 1 receiver on the opposite side of the ball. And he's never been in that situation in the NFL. So you're trusting a whole new set of DBs to work together and come together for the starting unit and get chemistry together. You're trusting a corner who has never covered a team's wide receiver 1 in the NFL to do it week in and week out. And you're asking Minkah Fitzpatrick to potentially play somewhat out of position like we saw early in his career, where he might get bumped to the nickel. Now, granted, they signed Mike Hilton, who I believe was an awesome signing to take over those slot snaps, but this is another older DB. He's 31 or 32 years old, maybe older. If he gets hurt, Minkah is really the only one in that secondary who can play in the slot. And if you take him away from that free safety position, teams are just going to take the top off of the secondary like it's no one's business. Now, what they do have going for them is a really good pass rush, right? Like, not really good. I shouldn't say really good, but definitely a top half of the league pass rush. So that should mitigate some of the lapses in the secondary. But I don't know if they're going to be able to do that for 17 games a season. And if not, if they make the playoffs somehow, which I don't think they are, I just don't know how this defense is going to function, especially if that pass rush can't get home.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk about, a guy on the defensive end that you highlighted for your dark horse, and that we almost kind of had to reshuffle because he had an injury in practice recently. He was carted off the field, but then it looks like it's not as bad as initially thought, and that's Chop Robinson. So,
yep.
First of all, before we get into why you like Chop Robinson, can you kind of elaborate on what happened earlier this week?
Yeah, so he went down. He got carted off with an injury yesterday, actually. It doesn't look like it's going to be serious. He posted on his Instagram. He said, "I'm good, everyone. Like, I'm just like, this is all precautionary, like, which is what you usually see in training camp. Like, when guys get carted off, more often than not, it's just for a sprain or it's just for, maybe something tweaked, right? Like maybe they pulled a hammy or whatever the case may be, right? So a lot of the times in camp when someone gets carted off, it's more precautionary rather than the actual extent of the injury. Like in the first day or two of camp, we saw Tyler Guyton go down and they thought it was an ACL tear and his ACL is intact. Like he's going to probably play week 1. At the worst, he'll be back in the lineup week 4 as long as his recovery goes well, right? So Chop Robinson, kind of a scary situation. Looks like he's going to be okay. But I loved him coming out of college. He was my second edge in last year's class, and he was my 21st guy on my big board of 250. So he was in my top 10% of players in that class last year, and he was just an animal, especially in the pass rush, right? So if we look at edge rushers with 250 pass rush snaps last season, he was 4th in pressure rate at just over 17%. He was 3rd in pass rush win rate, just below 27%, which is just ridiculous. That's like Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons territory. 6th in pressure rate against true pass sets at 18.77%. He was 7th in pass rush win rate against true pass sets at just under 24%. He was tied 5th in pass rush production, which we talked about last episode, 9.7, which is almost elite. 10 is usually elite. And then against true pass sets, anything 15 plus is elite. He was 4th with 15.5. So we're looking at last season alone, a top 5 edge in terms of pass rush. Now, his run defense, there's something to be desired there. He is not a good run defender right now. Could he become one? And that would then he takes over Bradley Chubb's role and becomes a starter on this defense? Absolutely. But he had the 22nd worst run stop rate or run stop grade in amongst all edges. He had the 2nd highest missed tackle rate, and he was tied for the 3rd lowest stop rate amongst all edges. So his run defense, really spotty and really shaky. And that's something where if he improves, we're looking at someone who could play 800 to 1,000 defensive snaps a year. But for right now, he's going to sit in that 400 to 600 range, maybe push to 700 because his pass rush is so damn good. I could see Bradley Chubb getting traded, not this season, but next offseason, 2026. If he is designated with a post-June 1st cut or trade, so normally what this means, if you're a pre-June 1st cut or trade, any money you're owed, the team has to pay upfront on that date they cut or trade you.
Yep.
But if they wait until after June 1st, then they can split it up over the remaining years of that contract. Now, he has 2 years left in his contract after 2025. So it would save the Dolphins $20 million, and they would take a $10 million dead cap hit in 2026 and $12 million in 2027. That seems like that's where it's going to go if Chop Robinson improves his run defense this year. If he does not, I could see them keeping Bradley along just to have it as an extra body, maybe just for insurance in case Jalen Phillips goes down, or let's say they make Chop the starter. Just having that veteran presence might be nice there. But as far as going to this season goes, I want to see Chop take that next step in run defense and be just as effective as a pass rusher, if not better. Because he was really raw coming out, but you just saw the athletic traits and the talent, and he showed enough flashes of really good spin moves, rip moves, cross chops, which is becoming a huge move in the NFL. His speed to power is incredible for his size. And he's one of the fastest edges in the NFL already. So if he can take that next step in the run game and utilize some of those traits from the pass rush to the run defense, he's going to look really, really good and is going to be one of those people who's going to help make the secondary look a little bit better than they actually are.
Yeah. I'm going to throw kind of a curveball question at you here. Yes. I know you feel like the Dolphins are not going to be a playoff contender. They might take a step back this year, but I'd be curious to see if you could pull up their regular season schedule for me.
Yep.
And take a look.
Oh, we can do that again.
I'd like to see if there is a game on their schedule where if they win it, you'd be like, all right, maybe there is something here with these Dolphins. Obviously, I think the one that stands out is week 3 playing the Bills in Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very tall order.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering if there was anything else maybe down the line, maybe in the first 10 weeks of the season that you feel like could be kind of a statement game for Miami outside of the obvious games against Buffalo.
Yeah, I think the one that stands out to me is against the Chargers. And I believe that's week 5 that they play, or it's week 6, excuse me. If they could beat the Chargers, because now they don't have Rashawn Slater. So this offensive line is already suspect outside of Joe Alt, obviously. And if Zion Johnson pans out at center and takes that next step that he hasn't done yet as a former first-round pick, right? But other than that, the rest of the offensive line is very suspect and very apt to getting beat, especially early in the downs, right? The Chargers had an effective pass attack last year, which is kind of contrarian to Greg Roman offenses. So if they can force Justin Herbert to throw bad passes with an effective pass rush, and these DBs can get some life under them, and this offense can come out and put up maybe 3 touchdowns against this defense, this could be a low-scoring game where the defense starts to get some momentum and the offense can kind of get their wheels under them, because the Chargers do not have a bad defense. They also don't have a great defense, right? And I think losing, they have a good pass rush, but not having, and I know he's got the injuries, but if they treated Joey Bosa as a designated pass rusher, I feel like this defense would have been a lot better last year and they might have kept him around if he knew that was going to be his role. But anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. But the Dolphins, if they can win this game, because if we look, they're probably going to beat the Colts week 1. Pat's game is a toss-up. They're probably going to lose to the Bills, and it's a toss-up with the Jets. So let's say they start 2-2. Their next 4 games are against the Panthers, at Carolina, home against the Chargers, at the Browns, which they should win that game, and then at the Falcons. Then after that, they hit a little bit of a gauntlet. But if they can pick up 2 wins in that 4-game stretch in that kind of murky, they could win, they could lose kind of area, they could be 4-4 going into week 9 in their game against the Ravens. Now they will have a tough run. They have Ravens, Bills, Commanders, but then after that, their schedule kind of eases up a little bit. So I think if they can come out 4-4 or 5-3 in that first 8-week stretch, they could push for playoffs. Do I think they're going to? No. I just think this pass defense is too bad. And the teams that they're playing have high octane passers and high trait passers. Like Anthony Richardson, shit on him all you want, has a rocket arm, and if you can figure out that accuracy piece and figure out pass protections, the Colts should win that game. Drake May against the Pats. Pats are looking to be very much improved, which we'll talk about them in a little bit. I think the Pats can win that one. They'll lose to the Bills. The Jets, we'll see. But the Panthers, we'll get into the Panthers, but I really like the Panthers this year. I think the Panthers would end up winning. On paper, the Chargers should win. Then on paper, they should beat the Browns, and then the Dolphins-Falcons game is a toss-up, right? So of those first 8 games, if they finish worse than 4-4, I say playoffs are out the window. But if they can finish 4-4 or maybe 5-3, that could be enough to just push into the 7th seed, maybe even the 6th seed by the end of the season.
Yeah.
So I like that question, though. Appreciate that.
And then the final question before we move on to some of the other teams in the division. Mike McDaniel. Like we said, you just went through their whole schedule, saw how they could kind of push for the playoffs, saw where, they might struggle a little bit. For you, is this kind of make or break for Mike McDaniel?
I think so. I think if this team ends up somehow 2-6 in the first 8 weeks, I think he's going to get canned mid-season. What made him a really good head coach early on was how honest he was with his players, which he still is, and honest with the media, which he still is, which is awesome. But that's great when your team is really good. When they've had the lapses they've had, like Tyreek Hill has not panned out well for the team outside of those first 2 years. Last season was a shell of himself, and now is looking like that again coming into 2025. Your answer at tight end is Darren Waller, who was rapping not even 6 months ago and was trying to be a hip-hop star. Your interior offensive line sucks, and you don't know what you have in your tackle positions. What he does really well is designs an awesome run game, but you're not going to be able to run with how far you're going to be behind against some of these against these offenses that are just going to light you up in the pass game. So you're going to have to pass to catch up. And if Tyreek Hill isn't available, that means Jalen Waddle is your wide receiver 1. And I like Jalen Waddle. I think he's a high-end wide receiver 2. I don't think he can be a true X in any offense that you plug him in right now in the NFL. And I wish that was different, but it's not. And I think that's going to be his biggest hang-up, is that he's going to have to throw the ball a lot more than he's used to doing and more than he's comfortable with. And I just don't think he has the juice in designing a passing attack that he does in designing a rush attack. And I think because of that, the Dolphins are going to make a move if he's 3-5, 2-6, or potentially worse going into week 9, week 10.
Yeah. All right. So moving into we've got the Bills covered. We've got the Dolphins covered. Now let's get into the New York Jets. The Aaron Rodgers era is over.
Thank God.
A new look Jets team. A lot of movement in the off season. Obviously, I think a lot of Jets fans are entering the season very skeptical. I think at this point, considering I am a Jets fan, so I think I'm included there. What we've been through these past couple of years is given us a lot of reason to be skeptical, not really kind of count our chickens before they've hatched. But overall, I like a lot of the moves that have been made so far this offseason, namely the hiring of Coach Aaron Glenn. Could you talk about, I think a lot of the Jets struggles have started at the head coach position. And can you kind of talk about where this hiring has kind of been a good move to start getting, Jets fans, in the right headspace for this season?
Absolutely. And I kind of want to open it up with a point that there are some coaches who are awesome coordinators and bad head coaches. And there are some coaches who are good to great coordinators and are even better head coaches. And I think Aaron Glenn is going to be one of those guys who falls into the latter of that category. He's a tone setter. I think he was a great hire. Multiple players, most notably Elijah Vera Tucker, who's been with the Jets since 2020 or even 2019. I might have that wrong. He's been with the Jets for a while. He came out and said that there's a lot more accountability in the previous regime, that they're being pushed a lot more. If you look at the Jets social media over the past couple of years, they've done the fun, every team's doing the big social media thing, but they do fun challenges with the players after practice, or they put something on a board that's a hypothetical, 100 men versus one gorilla was the big debate this winter, right? They would put stuff like that on their board to ask the players when they're leaving a practice or a lift or whatever. There's barely been any of that. There's no added bullshit unless they're just looking to get clicks or they need some form of traction to engage with the fans, right? It's been almost exclusively true football content. And I think that's a top-down view. I think that's what they're trying to transform this team to. Is no longer the laughing stock of the NFL. They want to be serious, and they want to be treated seriously like they were in 2009 and 2010, right? Back in the Rex Ryan days.
Yeah.
And he is already coming from a culture of a team that was hapless and was considered one of the worst teams in the NFL in the entire history of the NFL. And now they're Super Bowl contenders. And he was a massive piece of that, transforming that defense into constantly being bad to, despite having more than half their starters hurt, one of the top defenses in the league the past few years. And I think that's really what he brings in, is that he's able to maximize talent regardless of what the roster looks like. And I think he's going to be able to do that with the Jets, with some of the free agents he's brought in, some of the draft picks they've made, some of the coaches they've hired, and just in general, what he's going to be able to do. And the last point I want to make is the Lions by week 17 last year, 6 starters were on IR and 5 other contributors were on IR, all on the defensive side of the ball. They had 13 players total from the defensive side on IR by week 17. And that includes Aiden Hutchinson, Alex Anzalone, Carlton Davis, who was supposed to be the quarterback one on that team, Ennis Rakestraw, who was supposed to be their nickel corner as a rookie, and he's hurt again, which we'll talk about Ennis next episode. But he had a lot of key players that he wanted to use in unique and fun ways to make this defense maximized, all get hurt. So he had practice squad players on this defense coming out, and he was putting them in favorable situations and maximizing their talent. And he was able to do it all in almost exclusively man coverage. So now you come to the Jets, who have one of the best man corners in the NFL, have one of the best pass rushes in the NFL, a really good core of linebackers at an NFL level. Like, he's going to have so much fun with this defense, and I think the offense is going to feed off of that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the big offensive acquisitions this year, obviously, quarterback Justin Fields.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting move for the Jets. Obviously, Justin Fields, he's had his struggles in this league. He's had his struggles in Chicago. But I think if I could, talk from a fan's perspective, it's nice to see the Jets acquiring a quarterback that has NFL experience that's also not in his mid to late 30s. That's no offense to any quarterbacks in their mid to late 30s, but it's nice to know that this is kind of seen as a move not only to just get some talent immediately that you don't have to develop, which, let's be honest, if we've looked at the past decade, I think the jury's out. The Jets have struggled to develop rookie quarterbacks into franchise quarterbacks, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the Aaron Rodgers move, if I could bring that up one more time, that was seen as kind of a get right until you look to the future move. No matter, what we thought before we saw what happened with the team, that we knew that Jets fans were only going to be able to see 1, 2, maybe 3 years of Aaron Rodgers. But with Justin Fields, he's already developed. He's a high quality quarterback, and the Jets can have him for a considerable amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
It's also important because you have, the other thing too with these tricky quarterback situations is I feel like with the Jets, you have these targets on offense that are really high talent that the Jets have drafted, namely Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson, that you want to make sure are in a comfortable position for the long term before they just go somewhere else. Because that's kind of the worst thing, is seeing, for any fan in any sport, is seeing young, extremely entertaining talent go somewhere else just because they cannot be developed right, and then you kind of lose who could be your franchise guys. So for you, talking about the Justin Fields to Garrett Wilson connection this season, what do you expect to see?
I expect to see Garrett Williams go for over 1,000 yards again. This is a proven pairing, right? And this was when Garrett Wilson was 18, 19 years old. So he wasn't Garrett Wilson, potential all-pro caliber player in the NFL, right? I'm just going to go over their 2 seasons they played together at Ohio State. They played 22 games. Garrett Wilson had 1,155 receiving yards, or 52.5 per game, and 11 touchdowns, which is decent. He had 90.4 receiving yards per game in 2020, which is when he started to take that next step and started to get more snaps. In that span, he had 5 games with over 100 yards, and 4 of those came in that 2020 season. He averaged 4.4 yards after catch per reception. He had a 40% contested catch rate, which you're looking for 40 to 50 in the NFL from a wide receiver 1. So he already fit that bill when he was, still developing. And he had 2.53 yards per route run. 3 is elite, 2 is kind of average, 2.53 is really good. You want to see that. And granted, Yes, it's college. The competition isn't as good as it was in the NFL, but Garrett Wilson was not nearly as polished as a receiver as he is now, where he's in that top 10 receiver territory. And he's proven it with bad QB play through his first couple of years in the NFL.
Yep.
Where I struggle with is Justin Fields. Now, last year he did pretty decent as a passer, but that Steelers offense did better once Russell Wilson came in. And you don't want to be in a conversation of, well, Russell Wilson is better at me at this point in his career. In my mind, if that's the case, you're probably never going to break through and develop the way you're supposed to as an NFL quarterback. But if anyone can make that happen, it's Aaron Glenn, because Jared Goff was looking like a bust after he got traded to the Lions, but Dan Campbell revived his career. I think Aaron Glenn can kind of do the same with Justin Fields. Former top-tier first-round pick. He's an ultra athlete compared to Jared Goff, who's like an okay athlete. He has a bigger arm than Jared Goff, where Goff has more of the nuance in the short to intermediate game, and he's better at layering passes. So if Aaron Glenn can tap into the traits that Justin Fields shines in and taking advantage of his deep ball passing, which Garrett Wilson did an awesome job of when they were at Ohio State together, use his athleticism in tandem with a sick running back room of Breece Hall, Isaiah Davis, Braylon Allen, who looks much more juiced up last year than more juiced up this year than last year.
Yep.
And if they really dive into that, I think this offense can do something. Now, the problem is who are they going to go to besides Justin Fields and Breece Hall? They drafted Mason Taylor, who was a decent tight end coming out of LSU, and they have Jeremy Ruckert backing him up. Long Island represent, Strong Island. Then you have Josh Reynolds, who's proven he's a capable wide receiver too, but he's not going to push the envelope. Malachi Corley is fighting for a roster spot, which I loved Malachi in college. So it sucks that he's kind of fighting for a roster spot at this point. But outside of that, there's not really a third or fourth option in this offense, a fourth option in this offense outside of Garrett Wilson, a mix of Mason Taylor or Jeremy Ruckert. So I don't really know if we can count that as the third option, but Breece Hall and Josh Reynolds are going to be fighting for the second most targets. And when your running back might be your second most targeted player, that's signs of you need a better receiving room. And it's nothing against Breece Hall. He's a good player, but that's not someone you should be targeting the second most in this offense. There's no running back besides maybe Christian McCaffrey that you should be targeting the second most on any given offense, right? So if he can't take that next step and become a passer who can just stick to his wide receiver one and then progress to other receivers when he's blanketed. If he can't do that, the Jets are going to be looking at a quarterback, maybe not next year, but maybe 2027. Maybe they try it one more time with Justin Fields.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about the college pairing, obviously that's one of those things that happens a lot in football, happens a lot in basketball, where two guys who played together in college and succeeded in college, they come together in the pros, and the natural first reaction is for people to get hyped. It's like, oh my God, we're going to see this connection one more time. It was so great. But like you said, the competition's different. People are at different points in their lives. You know what I mean? They're at different points in their personal and professional relationships with each other. And so things could change. And we've seen a wide range of how successful or unsuccessful these pairings could be. So if you could kind of give Jets fans a little outlook on what they should want from this pairing, I was curious to know if there are any college to pro teammates that you would like the Jets to, look to as an example, and then maybe a pairing that they would like to avoid being like in what you've seen in the NFL.
First one that comes to mind is Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. I think that's the epitome of college teammates excelling and just, Jamar Chase is the second best receiver in the NFL. Justin Jefferson is still number one. No one can argue that.
Yeah.
As much as people want to. We're at that point in the offseason, people will just argue anything, right? But to Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are incredible together. Jamar Chase just won the Triple Crown, which I think is kind of going under the radar because we had Saquon Barkley had the year that he had. But he would have won Offensive Player of the Year if not for what Saquon did. And then you have kind of not the bottom of that, but like kind of an outcome you don't want is Tua and Jalen Waddle. And again, no discredit to them as players, no discredit to them and what they bring as athletes and as players. But in terms of their connection, you want more than what's kind of happened between Waddle and Tua. And yes, Waddle's dealt with some injuries here and there, but I think you need to be better than them in order for this offense to take that next step and for Justin Fields to take that next step. Because if your goal is to be Waddle and Tua, that's a bad goal to have in terms of an NFL QB and wide receiver relationship. If that's your goal, you want to exceed your goal, right? Like, so if they want low hanging fruit and they're looking to keep Justin Fields around for 2 to 3 years, regardless of how this season goes, yeah, sure, that could be your goal. But I don't think the Jets want that. I think they have a really good roster. I don't think they're a true playoff pushing roster, but I think they could make a wild card spot if things play out right in their schedule and other team schedules. And I think a lot of that's going to hang on Justin Fields needing to push this offense in ways that we haven't seen this offense be pushed since the pre-Zach Wilson days.
Yeah. It's very interesting that all three of those pairings, Justin Fields, Garrett Wilson, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Tua and Jalen Waddle all are, when they were in college, were all kind of in the latter half of the 4-team college football playoff era. I wonder if that I can't tell you what that says about how NFL teams build their rosters, and how, like, the trend of a lot of college pairings existing in the NFL right now. But I feel like it's got to say something. Maybe we'll look at that at a later pod.
I think so. I mean, but here's the other thing: they all made college championship games.
Yeah, that's true.
Pairings. There's something to be spoken about that as well.
Yeah. Let's get into the Jets' dark horse, linebacker Jamien Sherwood.
Mm-hmm.
What do you love about this guy?
I just love how he fits into this defense. Now, granted, we'll see how he fits into Aaron Glenn's scheme, but I think he's going to like him as a coverage backer and let Quincy Williams come downhill and handle the run game, because Quincy has gotten better and better every year that he's been in the NFL and is one of the top 10 linebackers in the NFL today. Jamien Sherwood is a really good pairing next to him because Quincy is a great coverage linebacker. So Jamien gets to kind of feast in coverage too, because teams aren't going to look his way. They're going to look at Jamien. And guess what? Jamien's good in coverage too. If we just look at some of the PFF grades, right? He was 10th in overall defense grade. And this is among 64 linebackers with at least 500 snaps. So 10th in defensive grade. He's in the top quarter. 15th in run defense grade, in the top quarter. 12th in coverage grade, in the top 5th. And same thing with run defense grade. He was tied 16th in lowest receiving rate allowed, top quarter of linebackers. 14th lowest passer rating around, top quarter of linebackers. We're looking at a guy who is one of the better linebackers in the league, if not pushing to be great linebacker in this league, in a league where linebacker play is kind of attributed to tackles and tackles for loss, which there's a lot more nuance that goes into the linebacker position, and people overvalue players like Bobby Wagner, Nick Bolton, Fosoye Aluakan on the Jaguars, right? Like, they overvalue it because they make a lot of tackles, when that's not the case. That's not their only job. More often than not, they're going to be in coverage, and that's really what you should be looking at. And Jamien has showed he's not only a damn good coverage linebacker, he's really good against the run as well. So I think he's going to have an even bigger breakout year than last year. I think people are starting to realize how good he is. And I think if he takes this next step going into 2025, we could be looking at a top 5 linebacker duo of Quincy and Jamien going into 2026.
Yeah. And my final question, Jordan, it comes from, honestly, I asked this from deep within my soul. Where can the Jets fans find hope for 2025?
Aaron Glenn. You just have to trust him. You have to trust that he's going to right the ship and bring accountability that has not been in this organization since the Rex Ryan days. I know he's polarizing, but man, he had those guys playing hard, fast, and physical every single day and every single moment they stepped on the field. And I think that's what you can get out of Aaron Glenn, and have a little bit more polish, a little more against bullshit and distractions, and an actual strong defensive-minded scheming coach. Now, Rex Ryan was great at defense. I think in today's NFL, Aaron Glenn is one of the best defensive-minded coaches that we have out there. And I think that's going to echo throughout the entire organization. So don't lose hope if 2025 does not go well. I think they will be competitive, which is what you want for a team like the Jets right now. I think 2026, 2027, if you're still not competitive and you're not pushing for playoffs, that's when you can hit the panic button.
Yeah. Fair. I think that's a fair analysis. I feel like, not to be that guy, but I feel like we're in this first year of a cycle that I've seen a lot in the past decade, but it's a part of the cycle that I'm always ready to be a bit hopeful for. So let's get into our final team of the day. Perennial champions of the division, but in recent years have been relegated to bottom feeders. This is a very strange position that the Patriots, anyone who's watched the Patriots over the last 20 years, is found themselves in. But for you, I mean, the outlook for New England is definitely interesting. Definitely a bit of a transition year. But it looks like you have a really high hopes on their defense. Could you kind of expand a little bit onto what you like out of this defensive front?
Absolutely. I think this is going to be a top 8 defense in the NFL. And a lot of people will look at how they did last year being a bottom 5 defense in almost every category and say, well, how can they be that much better? Well, for starters, they're bringing back a lot of guys who were hurt last year, namely Christian Gonzalez, who is one of the best corners in the NFL. He was hurt a good amount his rookie year, played a good amount last year. I believe he dealt with some injuries, but he's coming back fully healthy. And if we take away the Gerard Mayo mishap of 2024, and we look at the post-Brady Belichick era defenses from 2020 to 2023, they were 7th in EPA per play, 10th in success rate, 5th in dropback or EPA per dropback, 9th in dropback success rate in terms of stuffing passes or stopping passes from succeeding. They were 10th in rush EPA per play and 13th in rush success rate. They were top 10 in every category except rush defense in success rate, and they were still in the top half of the league.
Yep.
So you're looking at a defense who, before Gerard Mayo came in, was really, really good, regardless of not having Brady and being on the field a lot more than they're used to. Granted, this roster is much different than what it was in the Belichick days, but when you look at Mike Vrabel coming in, we talked about roster maximizers with the Jets. Mike Vrabel is one of the best maximizers in the NFL. Now, can he get them to get over the hump and get to a Super Bowl? We'll see in a couple of years. He couldn't do it with the Titans, but we'll see if the Patriots have a little bit more patience with them. Yep. But he just went and added a bunch of defensive talent and guys that are going to play a ton of snaps, 400 to 500 plus, if not more. And the number one guy on that list is Milton Williams, who we talked about Moro Ojomo last episode. Milton Williams is just as effective as he is and played more snaps, right? If you look at any of those metrics that Moro was ranked near the top and in pass rush, Milton Williams was at the top for the entire season in those categories and really took off last year. And I think pairing him with Christian Barmore, Keon White, a couple of other guys we'll talk about later in the episode, he's going to get a lot of one-on-one opportunities like he had with the Eagles last year. So I thought that was the best signing they had. Robert Spillane, who is an incredible run-defending linebacker. And he's dropped off a little bit in coverage, but he's still okay in that area. Really good addition to the linebacker room. Carlton Davis, if he can stay healthy, is going to be an awesome cornerback too, opposite Christian Gonzalez. And I think they're going to be one of the best corner tandems going into 2025. Harold Landry, he's an edge. He's going to be more run support. He doesn't have any nuance as a pass rusher, but he is a damn good run defender. He's going to be in for those run defending snaps that they want to really push the envelope and drive the line of scrimmage back. And again, I think he'll get opened up more with that interior D-line really working well together. And then they drafted Joshua Farmer, who is decent in the run and decent in the pass rush game. I don't think he's going to start, but I think he's going to get a good amount of snaps in rotation. And we're probably looking at a 300 to 400 snap rookie season, which is really good considering the depth on this roster. And this defense, I think, is just going to be nuts with Vrabel and Terrell Williams rejuvenating this system and bringing in the guys that they did.
Yeah, and, I feel like you could probably read into this a little too much, like more than it's worth. But Mike Vrabel is a guy that won 3 Super Bowls as a player on the New England Patriots. And then he went into coaching, he became obviously a linebacker coach, then became a defensive coordinator, before finally becoming a head coach at a few different stops around the NFL. And now he's the head coach of the Patriots, taking on the reins of a team that he won 3 titles with. So how much do you feel like that kind of bodes well for Pats fans? I mean, do you think that like the decision to hire a guy that played under Belichick kind of really can help satisfy them a little bit?
I think it can. And I think there's levels to it, right? Because you can be a player on a Super Bowl winning roster and be as, productive and contributing towards that as Mike Vrabel was. Obviously caught 2 touchdowns, played really good defense in those Super Bowls as well. That in and of itself is a really good background to have. I think when you become a coach, it's completely different because you don't want to be like Belichick, right? You want to have your own culture, you want to have your own identity, and you want to have people buy in. And that's the part that a lot of people struggle to miss, because if Super Bowl winning players move into coaching was the answer to get teams to Super Bowl, every single team in the NFL would be hiring former players from Super Bowls to be their head coaches that have some interest in coaching, right? That would just be the end all be all, but it's not. That's not how it works. You have, former players who were kind of just role players who are awesome coaches. And you have guys who were really good players who are really good coaches. And you have the other side of that. You have players who sucked who are bad coaches and players who were really good that are bad coaches as well. So you can't just go into the former player bucket, former Super Bowl player bucket and say, yeah, this is a Super Bowl winning guy who can get us to Super Bowl and win. He got really close in Tennessee. But Pat Mahomes is Pat Mahomes. You were up 10-0 and you can't stop him, right? That's going to happen, right? He's a generational talent. Yep. If this team wants to make a Super Bowl, you're going to run into him again at some point in your first 3 years here. Because I think if Drake May takes those steps that he's going to, they continue to improve this offensive line and his receiving weapons, and this defense sticks together, this could be a Super Bowl roster in 2 years. 2026, this could be a team fighting for a Super Bowl next year. As long as Vrabel has the progression with this team that he did with the Titans early on in his tenure. And he had Ryan Tannehill throwing the football. He doesn't have rocket arm, uber athlete, top-tier prospect Drake May throwing the football, right? This is a completely different way he can run and tailor the offense than he ever could with Ryan Tannehill, who was good in those 2 to 3 years with the Titans when they were competitive, not so much the rest of his career, right? So I think that's really going to play into it of it's not just the fact that he won a Super Bowl, it's how he elevates rosters that is really going to help push this team forward.
Yeah. Hearing that the Patriots could be a Super Bowl contender by 2026 is not what I wanted to hear today. I still have a little lingering trauma from the Brady years, but we move forward. Drake May, let's talk about him heading into year 2. What do you like out of him? Where do you think he could make a jump? And what do you really want to see him get over in year 2?
I just want to see him do better under pressure. We talked about under pressure quarterback play when we were talking about Jalen Hurts and top 10 QB dilemma last episode, right? Drake May, he was not supposed to play last year. He kind of got thrown to the wolves a little bit. And his first game was against a damn good Texans defense, which I was at that game. Seeing Drake May play live was really neat to watch. And this is when CJ Stroud was still really good. CJ Stroud, and he still is really good. But he definitely took a step back as a passer after the offensive line kind of shattered last year. Moving away from CJ Stroud to Drake May was playing at a comparable level to him in that game. He was still making some mistakes, as all rookies do. But I think the biggest thing for him is that he actually has a receiving core that matches that skill set. He's not going to be relying just on Kayshon Boutte or Demario Douglas or Hunter Henry or the ghost of Jalen Polk, which sucks to say he's only a year into his career. We're already calling him the ghost of Jalen Polk of what he was in college, right? This year he's got Stephon Diggs as his true X, and Stephon Diggs coming off it. He looked really good at the beginning of last year until that ACL tear, and he's been looking really good during camp. So he's probably not going to lose a step. He might a little bit, but he's still a really good X receiver. I think Kyle Williams is going to end up starting. He's super shifty, very good nuanced route runner, and he does some damage when he gets the ball in his hands. So if they can get him moving on some motion or getting him in shift sets where there's some double motion going on, this is someone who could easily get open against most DBs in the NFL. Then you can plug in Demario Douglas in the slot. He played 80% of his snaps in the slot last year. Obviously, you don't want someone in the slot 90 to 100% of the time, but I think he can keep that volume up, especially now that he doesn't have to play on the outside as much. And then they're going to have a really deep receiving room, and there's going to be some tough cuts coming up. They're going to have to get rid of – they have 7 guys outside of the 3 I already mentioned. They might keep 6, but the reality is that the next 7 guys I'm going to name, only 2 of them are probably going to make the roster, and that's 2 of either Matt Collins, Kayshon Boutte, who I mentioned, Javon Baker, who was good at UCF, was not that good last year, but seems to be making a jump. Rookie Ethan Chisholm, who they love. Kendrick Bourne, who's just a veteran body, but I think he's going to be one of the first guys to get cut in that room. And unfortunately, Jalen Polk, who I was super high on in last year's class, just between the injuries and not playing well when he did get on the field last year and not being able to participate fully in training camp this year, I think he's going to be a cut candidate, which sucks for someone who is, going into year 2. But maybe they're able to bring him back on the practice squad. Maybe they put him on the IR so they can stash him for another year. But not looking good. But if I had to pick, I think they're going to keep Kayshon Boutte and probably Efton Chisholm. Matt Collins is they have people that can do what Matt Collins does. Same thing with Kendrick Bourne. They have guys that can do what Kendrick Bourne does. And if they keep a 6th, you're looking at Javon Baker or Jalen Polk being one of the guys they keep, because they get the veteran present with Stephon and arguably Demario Davis as well. They kind of get the veteran aspect from them. And then with that, Hunter Henry at tight end, Austin Hooper at tight end, you have other receiving members who are savvy veterans in this league.
And then on this team, who do you got for a dark horse?
Kayvon Chason, edge. He spent last season with the Raiders, and from week 13 to week 18, when he got the bulk of his snaps, he looked really good. In that span, out of edge rushers who got 100 snaps, he was 10th in pass rush grade at an 80.3, and he had a 10.6 pressure rate, which is okay. Like, we'll take that. That's good. But he's not going to be asked to start. He's going to be asked to fill in for Harold Landry in pass rush situations, which that's why they got Caleb on to be a pass rusher. Mm-hmm. He's 9th in pass rush grade against true pass sets at 79.8. That's really good. And he was 10th in stops and TFL, or he was tied 9th in stops and TFLs with 11 of those. So even though he's going to be used on passing downs, he can assist in the run game and provide some juice there if needed. He's also a former first rounder who was key, and we were talking about those college championship runs. He was key on that LSU 2019 championship run, which is one of the best college teams that we've ever seen. It rivaled that 0-1 Miami team. So I think getting someone like him to help rush the passer, and he's kind of getting looked at as just a depth piece. I think he's someone that's going to play 400, 500 snaps because he has a pass rush juice and he's a decent run defender. So if Harold Landry's not cutting it, you can plug him in and you're not going to miss a step with him.
Yeah. And so the real burning question for the Patriots, you mentioned 2026, 2027 being some years to target, but what about this season? Do you think the Patriots have a shot at the playoffs this year?
I don't think so. I know they have a little bit of a tougher schedule than most of the other teams in the NFL, if not definitely one of the tougher ones. I think I saw somewhere they had the toughest strength of schedule. But again, that's based on last year, not based on current rosters this year, which is why I say it might be on the tougher side. I think some of the teams are lost some key players, but I don't think playoffs should be in the picture this year. I think the goal should be develop Drake May as much as you can and let this defense go to work and let this defense get some chemistry, stay healthy, rotate guys consistently, even if that means you're going to lose 1 or 2 more games than you normally do. Mm-hmm. Keep this team healthy because they have some good players, but some of these good players do have injury history, and you want to keep them healthy as long as you can, especially going into 2026. So rotate the defense, keep them effective, let Drake May develop with a super savvy veteran receiver like Stephon Diggs and Hunter Henry, utilize the young guys, and let this run game take off. We didn't even talk about the run game. Travion Henderson is probably going to lead this team in rush snaps. Like, Ramondre Stevenson was good a couple of years ago. He's not a true bell cow, and I think Travion just provides more home run ability, more juice as a pass protector, and as a rusher overall. And that is also going to help Drake May take that next step is leaning on this rushing attack.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that wraps up our conversation about the AFC East. Jordan, we're going to be coming back to you guys later this week with some more previews. We're talking about the NFC North next, home of some of the most contentious rivalries in this league. But so far, we've got 8 teams down, plus an in-depth discussion about the NFL's major media deal with ESPN. You can find all of that on the House Enterprise YouTube channel, as well as all of our House Enterprise pages, which you can see scrolling down on this bottom ticker if you're watching the video pod. If you want to get a specific breakdown of just your team on the House Enterprise YouTube channel, we're going to be putting out a playlist of segments from these podcasts just covering the teams. We've got the NFC East dropping first, and then we'll have the AFC East added to the playlist as soon as possible. But in the meantime, keep checking out House Enterprise at house-enterprise.com, and all the tickers that you're seeing on the screen right now. We're on X, we're on Instagram, we're on YouTube, we're on TikTok, we're even on Instagram Threads if you're using that. So keep checking us out for great NFL content, great college basketball content on the way. It's getting to that point in the year, and pretty much anything our incredibly talented writing staff, is rolling around in their heads on a daily basis. So for Jordan Laube, I'm Sam Basel. This has been the Basel Pod, and we'll see you guys next time.